£15 billion. That's how much the UK government is about to pump into solar, battery, heat pumps and insulation for UK homes. And I'm genuinely worried about what it's going to do to the industry. So in this video, I'm going to explain what the new Warm Homes Solar Grant Scheme actually is, who it applies to, and crucially why, if it doesn't get done properly, it could create unsafe installs, cowboy behaviour and unrealistic expectations for homeowners. If you've lived through Eco, Green Deal and other government grant schemes, you'll know that often when grant money starts getting splashed around, cowboys see pound signs and jump on the bandwagon to try and take advantage of the situation. Unfortunately, as we've seen over and over again in the solar industry and with EV chargers, often that results in poor quality installs that are frankly unsafe and unexpecting homeowners being taken advantage of. You may have seen videos of us showcasing these kind of installs on our channel to try and expose what has been going on in the industry. I'm just worried that that's going to happen even more now with this huge amount of money being pumped out there if the grants are not handled properly or measures are not put in place to ensure quality. Now, don't get me wrong, I think this is a great idea in principle. The government is trying to encourage people and help people to have warmer homes. The reality is that there are millions of people currently in what's called fuel poverty at the moment in the UK, and that simply means that they can't afford to run the heating properly and keep their house warm. To combat that, the UK government are trying to fund schemes that will help people get insulation to keep the heat in the home and to be able to heat the home more efficiently with electricity rather than gas, using things like heat pumps, but also to be able to generate their own electricity and reduce their bills using solar and battery systems. In principle, this is fantastic, and it's the way that we should be heading. Relying more and more on renewable energy and less on fossil fuels is only a good thing. But the danger is that when all of this money gets splashed about, if it's not managed properly, it can result in poor quality installs, as we've seen over and over again. But let's give you a little overview of what the government have announced with regards to these grants. So they're saying they're going to put £15 billion out there to cover these grants. The grants are going to be made up of either fully funded installs for households with a lower income, or zero interest or low interest loans for people to help them to get these technologies installed at a lower cost, or be able to spread the payment out so that people who don't have a ton of cash sitting waiting to spend can actually still fund a project like this and pay for it over time. They're aiming to have up to 5 million homes upgraded by 2030, and that is an ambitious goal. Some of the technologies that are included are solar PV and battery systems, heat pumps, and that could be air source, ground source, or air-to-air heat pumps, home batteries as a standalone, smart controls to enable you to, for example, control your heating more efficiently and save money and energy that way, insulation, whether that be wall, floor, or roof insulation, and draft protection, which is quite basic but a fundamental thing to avoid heat loss within a home. Where do these grants apply? Well, it's only for England. So Scotland and Wales have their own grant schemes that have been running already. England has kind of missed out for quite a while, and it seems like this initiative is to try and help England to get on the same level as Scotland and Wales have been by allowing grant funding for systems like this, which has been lacking for a while in England itself. It applies to privately owned or landlord rented properties with an energy performance certificate rating of D to G. And in general, the grants are available for people with a household income of less than £36,000, but there are some exceptions for people who are getting certain kinds of benefits. They may still benefit from these grants even if the household income is slightly higher. Now, on paper, this looks incredibly generous, but the question is, how is it going to be delivered and how is quality going to be managed? The first pillar of this grant funding is for low-income households, and the government have announced £5 billion of funding for basically home upgrades, so where an existing home needs to be made more energy efficient by various means, and often this could be multiple things. So getting insulation installed, getting a heat pump fitted, and getting solar and battery system fitted, that could be a solution that you might be able to benefit from with this grant funding. Now, we did a video of a classic example of this with a man who had had the insulation fitted, a heat pump installed and solar and battery installed in a very old property out in the countryside, and the goal was to make this very old property that was not at all energy efficient much more energy efficient. The grant funding that was given to him was very generous, but unfortunately he had many problems with the installation process, so much so that he had to put in complaints, and a lot of paperwork and a lot of headache was involved for him to try and get things uninstalled and reinstalled properly. If you want to watch that full video, I'll leave a link up on the screen where you can watch that after this video. Now, the second pillar is something that seems like it might be available to everyone, and that is government-backed low interest or zero interest loans, which it seems like maybe the government is just going to pay the interest for the loan, but we're not 100% sure exactly how this is going to work yet. And then obviously there's the £7,500 heat pump grant funding, which is still going to be available. That means that anyone getting a heat pump installed will get £7,500 of the cost covered by the government to get that heat pump installed. Now, for people who are renting or in social housing, there's going to be special schemes. For example, groups of social housing may get all upgraded at once. There's even talk about central district kind of heating systems being installed so that a whole area is heated by one central system, which is quite interesting and innovative. We'll see exactly what happens with the rollout of that. And for rental properties who have generally fallen through the cracks with things like this, landlords are going to be given help to upgrade the properties so that the tenants benefit from reduced bills, warmer homes, less problems with things like damp, cold, and all of the problems that can come with a property that is not properly maintained or has a low energy performance certificate. And the whole idea behind this is to raise the standard of rental properties, which means that if you're a renter, you can live more in comfort without having to worry about very high bills. I've just finished watching the edit of this video and I've realised that I've missed one key piece of information, which is what should customers and installers do now? Well, the reality is we have no idea exactly how these grants are going to be rolled out yet. There is no information online. They've not been officially launched yet. So if you're a homeowner and you're thinking, great, can I get some grant money? Well, just hold your horses because there's no official information yet about how this is all going to work. You're just going to have to stay tuned until the government gives more information. And the same for installers. If you're thinking, I'd love to be able to offer these grants to my customers, well, again, you're going to have to wait for more information, but we will keep you up to date. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and the pinned comment of this video will be kept up to date with the latest information for you guys so you know exactly what's happening. Now, as I said earlier, this isn't the first time that the government has tried this. There was the Eco4 grant scheme, which many people would say was a complete disaster and a massive waste of money. We've certainly seen evidence of poor installs under that grant scheme over and over again. And then on top of that, there's things like the Great British Insulation Scheme. We've seen people having foam insulation installed in their lofts and then having to have it ripped out because it was damaging the property. Insulation cladding not being fixed properly. You think about the insulation cladding crisis that we've had with big public buildings which cause serious fire hazards. So the question is, what's going to be different about this? Well, the problem in the past was rushed installs, spray foam disasters, as you've mentioned, ventilation being ignored with insulation, solar just being bolted onto roofs that weren't suitable. And the problem wasn't the funding, the problem was the pressure to get these installs done quickly, cheaply, in high volume. Now, the reality is that cowboys follow cash. When these grants are rolled out, there are often big contractors or people who've got inside contacts in the government who win these contracts, maybe because they're the lowest bidder, and then they subcontract out to another firm who subcontracts out to another firm, and the endless trail of subcontractors means that margins get thinner and thinner and thinner, and the person who's actually doing the install is forced to do it very quickly in a very bad way or use poor quality materials because otherwise they simply won't make any money. There's also a lack of accountability because there are so many links in the chain that it's very hard to trace through to who's actually responsible for making sure the installation is done to a high standard, that it works properly, safely, that the customer understands it, and that everything is done as expected. The consequence of this is often new companies appear overnight, smash out thousands of poor quality installs, and then go bust and start again the next day under a slightly different company name. There's one person making a ton of money out of it, and many victims left with shoddy installations and no protection. Now, I'm not saying that most installers are bad. We know loads of great installers in the industry who pride themselves in high quality work and do it for a fair price. But the reality is that bad installers move fast when they see money. And with this £15 billion being announced, you can see how many bad installers might be tempted to plough in and try and take as much of this pie as they can. Now, with certain things like insulation, for example, if it goes wrong, yes, it might damage the home, it might create damp issues, etc., but it's not going to be inherently dangerous. However, with solar, battery systems and heat pumps, when you've got electricity, water, high voltages, powerful battery chemistries involved, safety is a real risk. Fire safety and electrical safety are often compromised, leaving people in very dangerous situations. And the sad thing is that it often costs more to fix a bad installation than it would have cost to have just done it properly in the first place. Take Ted, for example. We recently had to rip out Ted's solar and battery system and install a brand new system for him to get everything made safe and done properly. And the reality of that was the cost of that whole project would have been way more than if he just got a system installed properly in the first place. Maybe it would have cost a couple of £1,000s extra than what he had paid for his cowboy installation, but it would have lasted a lot more time and it would have saved him a lot of money in the long run. And of course, on top of that, you've got things like potential insurance being voided, mortgage issues. If you've got a badly installed system, it can ruin your life and create a ton of headaches. You might say that cheap installs don't stay cheap, they just delay the bill. You might pay cheap at the start, but it might cost you more in the long run in remedial works or higher costs of running the property than you expected because the system hasn't been designed correctly. Now, there's a phrase that's used commonly among solar installers and electricians in general, and that's what we call the race to the bottom. Many companies are undercutting each other. Price expectations get lowered with very cheap prices being splashed around on the internet. Customers expecting a cheap or even now free install means that companies have to lower their standards in order to do work to a certain price bracket that is just unrealistic. And that is what's causing this race to the bottom of lowered standards and poor quality installs. Now, you might say, yeah, but there are schemes in place to make sure that quality is monitored. Things like MCS, for example, the Micro Generation Certification Scheme, covers solar, battery and heat pump installations in the UK, and it's put in place to make sure that there is some kind of accountability for installers, that they're installing to a certain level and that the business processes that they have in place are there to protect the consumer. But is that enough? Well, many people wonder, because the reality is that although these schemes are in place, there are many cowboy installers who seem to be registered with these MCS schemes, and yet they get away with doing all of these poor installs. And the fact is that when something goes wrong, like what happened with Ted, the protections that are supposed to be there to help the customer to get remediation done are not always in place and actually practical to enable the customer to get things fixed. The reality is that no scheme will work if you don't know what good looks like. And so I would say the best thing for all of us to do is educate ourselves on what a good install looks like. So if you're a homeowner looking to get grant funded solar, you can educate yourself by watching videos like on our channel or many other channels that showcase what good work looks like, how a system should be properly designed. And if you educate yourself, then you can ask the right questions when getting a system designed and installed to hopefully avoid those cowboy installers that inevitably are going to be out there offering these grant funded installs. Also, the reality is to get a quality job done, it does cost. Nothing is really free. Even if the government grant is going to cover the cost, the question is how much of the cost is it going to cover? What additional costs might there be that you need to cover? And educating yourself about the full facts behind this will enable you to know exactly what the system is going to cost you, not just up front, but across the lifetime of the system. particularly if you're thinking about getting a loan. That's something that needs to be taken into strict consideration. So will the Warm Homes Plan actually work? Only time will tell. My gut feeling is there's going to be a few challenges and hurdles, but there are a lot of good installers out there willing to do a great job, and hopefully with the right help and support systems in place, customers and installers will be paired together to get a great installation done with help from the government in order to improve the quality of life for thousands of people. That's the goal behind this system, and I'm optimistic and hopeful that it will work. If we all do our bit, maybe we can help. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, why not settle and watch these two videos here. The top video shows what Ted had to go through when he had a shocking installation done at his home. And this video here shows a grant-funded solar install in Suffolk that went wrong.